How's everybody doing? It's Cevan, aka the Monkas. Joined with me today is Reed and Tyler, aka Mr. Slurp. And today we have a very special guest, Tyler's sweet, sweet prince, Ian, aka Cream City Creamers. And this is episode 11 of Likely to Dispute.
That was quite the intro from you there, Cevan. I would ask that none of you call me Mr. Slurp, respectfully. That might be a little too much for me. But yeah, we'd have our fourth team breakdown of or fifth at this point, so almost halfway done right now. So Ian, you want to jump in and introduce yourself? Second time
Yeah,
guest, first second time guest on the pod.
yeah, what up? Good to be back. I will say, the last time I was on the pod, I was having a weird day in the life. I go back and listen to my episode, and I'm like, "Hi, I'm Ian. I'm from Iowa." So I'm like, I'm gonna be feeling not like a timid little bitch this time.
There we go.
Sounds good. You might have to, might have to defend your team with me here against these two hooligans.
Oh, I can do that. I can do
All
that all
right.
day.
Reading any words before we jump into the question of the day?
I'm looking forward to chopping it up, I guess.
All right, cool. So, question of the day today on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being it's Jover, there's no coming back, to 1 being it ain't shit. How bad does a week one loss feel of the fantasy season? You start 0-1, doesn't matter how close or how much of a blowout it was. Just you got 0-1 on the sleeper page, 1 to 10. How bad does that feel?
Well, I mean, how much you lose by and who you lose to is very important. If I score 180 and I lose to someone who scored 185, it feels a lot worse than Rob putting up 77 in week one last year. So like,
That's
it's
fair
tough.
point. I mean, it is tough,
It's a
but
range. No worse. Like the absolute worst case, you put up like 77 in week one, get your ass kicked. It's like a four,
let
maybe a
let's
five.
let's just assume it's like an average loss. I don't know. I'm sure you could pull the numbers to figure out like an average loss margin, but something like a good like 125 to like 145. It's nothing. Or
Like
like
three or
one.
four.
Okay. Svan Ian.
Yeah, losing no matter what, week one sucks because all that hard work you did in the off season felt like just left a little bit short. So I'm just gonna say it's a 10. Losing week one,
Wow. You're
you've been
saying
waiting
that's
seven.
you're,
Yeah, you've
you're
been
saying the season's done with the week one lost?
well, pretty much. I mean, if we go back to Reed's redraft teams the last couple of years, loses week one and season's over. Um, but no, you've been waiting 7 months to get back into action and come out short. It's never a good feeling.
It's very like Savan to overreact to a small sample. That's kind of his thing. I mean, I can tell you at 12:25 on the first week of the season, he's going to say GG's to whoever he's playing in week one.
Yep.
That's a good point. Ian, where do you fall?
Yeah, like Reed said, I mean, it depends like who you lose to and how bad you lose. But assuming we're not gonna hold too much weight to those in this question, I'd also say it kind of depends on what format you're in. Like if it's redraft, it probably hurts a little more than a dynasty because you're like instant gratification of, oh fuck, the team I just drafted sucks. Um, but I think in general, I don't really hit the panic button that hard with a week one loss, so I'm gonna go with like a 3.
Okay.
I think Ian brought up a good point there that it hurts different in redraft when like you just acquired this team like a week ago. Whereas like if I lose in week one in this league, I'm like, okay, I'm fine. I feel good about the moves that I made. Like trust the process. With redraft, it's a lot
Yeah,
easier to be like, man, maybe my team blows. Because like when
Yeah.
you're acquiring, you're not acquiring players for the most part in Dynasty without like thoroughly thinking through what you're doing. Whereas redraft, you might panic on the clock and pick Gabe Davis in the fourth round, and then you're like, oh wow,
Hey.
maybe this wasn't it. So I agree. I think it's easier to hit the panic button in redraft when you're less researched on the guys you have, at least from
It's a,
my perspective.
it's a good point. I think I align closer with Savannah. I put myself at an 8. There's the fantasy season's always so short, and just to be behind the 8 ball right away is just an icky feeling. And it's I think it's easier to stay at the top of the standings than it is to claw your way back up. But that's
If
probably not
Savan
true.
loses week one, at least half of his team's going on the trade block right away. We can probably put money on that one as well.
I'm sure
That's
I'm
true.
sure I'm sure I'll work something out by the end
Ty-
of week one.
Tyler, I will say that I feel like my answer with that question was pretty consistent with the one that you asked for the first time I was on pod. Because the question today then was, would you rather win your first three or win your last
Mm,
three? And on that one, I said I'd rather win my last three. So those line up pretty
that
well.
is consistent. Good call back there.
We got a
Good
good front
call.
office here.
Yep. All right. Well, speaking of front office, let's just move into the team here. This is Cream City Creamers here. Cevan has them as a favorite. Reed has them as a favorite. I have him as a favorite. Whoa. And Ian also has himself as a favorite. Trade cut values across the bottom there. You see quarterbacks are first, running backs third, receivers fifth, tight ends eighth.
I think
Last year, go ahead.
go ahead. Sorry, I thought you
I
were
was just
done.
saying, last year Ian went 7-7, finished with the most points for, but finished in fifth in the league.
I
All
think
you, Reed.
it's important to note that we all have him as a favorite. You have him as the favorite. There's a distinction there.
I do have him as my only favorite, and I have waffled on this a lot because I have been met with some resistance, notably from you. But I'm ready to, stand on the hill today and, go down if I need to, but pause. Uh,
Nice.
but I think this is
Mr.
the clear
Slurp.
the clear favorite for me, and I there's we'll get into it.
We waffled with many ideas of photoshopping Lamar's face onto Haley Steinfeld in some way, but we just settled for the simple wedding picture here for your
Yeah,
team logo.
I love the picture. You did
Yeah,
great.
Okay. So, yeah, should we just get into it then?
Let's
go
get
for it.
into it.
Okay. Go ahead and start with the MVPs. Few choices here. Ian, you went with Josh Allen. Do you want to explain that a little bit? Not that it needs too much explanation, but go ahead and give your thoughts.
Yeah, I do. Before that, though, I want to comment on one thing that was on the last slide, which was the
Yeah.
Keep Trade
Okay.
Cut rankings of picks. Those can blow me because Keep Trade Cut values seconds and thirds and fourths like way too high. Like even before the rookie draft, when I had two firsts in this class and two firsts next year, I think I was like sixth or something, just because I didn't have any seconds and thirds. And like those are valuable. I don't discount those. I don't only want first, but like you got to recognize that the beginning part of the first rounds, you're looking at like 90% hit rates. And then by the middle of the first rounds, you're looking at like 60, 70, and by the end you're looking at 50s, and below that it just gets worse. So like I'm prioritizing those, and I don't really care what it says
That's true.
about
And notably, they don't
your
score
picks.
points.
That is true.
So, good point there.
All right, back to MVP. He's the
Josh?
fucking man. I mean, when we started this dynasty and I first heard that the 101 was on the block, I pounced on that immediately. Because he is the 101 in Dynasty. He's the 101 in redraft. He's still the 101 in Dynasty if we were to redraft today. Like, the dude does everything. He's a baller through the air. He's a baller on the ground, and he plays through injuries like no other. Like Lamar could have been my MVP based on just like the ceiling that he put up last year. He had a better season than Josh Allen has ever had fantasy wise. But Josh has just scored 400 points in this league format year after year after year, going back to 2020. So he's my rock. He's a guy I know that it can give me, 40 of any given week. He can also, lose me a semis. But I think I think if anyone could have any one player to start their team, it would be this guy.
Yeah, this guy or the other guy who you also have.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
But the health is the big thing. I mean, he gets hurt, he plays through it. He fucks up his UCL, he plays through it. He, deals with finger stuff, knee stuff. He's taking the field and he's putting up numbers.
yeah, definitely. And I know you're not the only one to have Josh Allen listed as MVP here. Cevan, I'll let you follow up here with any other thoughts as you also have Josh Allen as Ian's team MVP here.
Yeah, it's no surprise I got Josh Allen. As you boys know, I got a special soft spot for Josh in my heart. Um, yeah, everything Ian said, I agree with. He's a great asset and a great football player and has a banging wife. So that's all.
apt points there.
Um, the other candidate here that Reed and I both selected was Lamar Jackson. Reed, I'll kick the rock to you on this one and give I don't know if it's an argument, but the the Lamar Jackson side of things.
Well, Ian mentioned the biggest part is that his last year was better than any year Josh Allen's ever had. So, no, again, that's obviously no slight to Josh Allen. You're not going to fight either of them, but Lamar 41 touchdowns last year, the rightful NFL MVP. But you know, I just in a 1 year scenario, I would take Lamar by the smallest of hairs, but I do agree that Josh Allen would go ahead of him due to age and potential injury history for the case of Josh being healthy. So, yeah, not going to fight it. I just take Lamar for 25.
Yeah, I'm in the same page. It's kind of a flip of the coin, but it's probably I probably land on Lamar just a little bit more often in my head. So I'm right there with you. Obviously, no incorrect choice between these two. So this is might have been as easy of a team MVP as we've had yet. I don't know, but my question here is, besides Lamar and Josh Allen, who's Ian's most likely non-QB MVP? Some notable names could be Brian Thomas Jr., Nico Collins, any of his rookie running backs, which being Omarion Hampton or Travion Henderson, Cooper Kupp. Who do you
Oh.
guys think?
I'll say um I toyed with a non-quarterback for this segment, and it was David Njoku.
Whoa.
Um, I
Oh
know a
yeah.
little bit outside outside the norm here, but David Njoku, obviously he's been really solid over the last couple of years, and assuming Joe Flacco wins the starting job, I know they're going to play like three quarterbacks, but for the whatever 8 games that Flacco plays, it's really Njoku and Judy and maybe Tillman, but Njoku just works around the line of scrimmage. He's been a target whore, and kind of like Jonnu last year. Um, I mean, I could see a world where he's getting 100 plus targets, and as a tight end, it's not too hard to crack the top 8 or so. So Njoku's a sneaky dark horse.
So you just gave the case for a top 8 tight end to be his most valuable non-quarterback.
Sounds like it. Um, I guess I'll jump in here. I'll say mine is Brian Thomas Jr. BTJ having a phenomenal rookie year last year in a mostly dysfunctional offense. Just bodes really well for him this year in a new system with an offensive-minded head coach. I don't think T-Law is bad. I know Cevan does. I
I
think
don't think
Trevor,
he's bad, to be fair. I think um, I just don't think he's good.
regardless, I'll take Brian Thomas Jr. here as my non-QB MVP.
Ian, go for it.
Yeah, I think if this answer was looking at what happened last year, it'd probably be Chase Brown, just given how I drafted with the zero RB strategy and how he turned out and getting him in the 11th. This year, I'll probably have to go with Nico, which is gonna look confusing given some of my later categories, but we'll explain our way out of that one. I mean, he's just a guy that has an incredible ceiling. Like when he's healthy, he's a threat for 30, 20 at any given week. They move Stephon Diggs, CJ Stroud hopefully should have a bounce back year and look more like his rookie year. So, I mean, if he can stay healthy and stay on the field, he's gonna be a rock on my team.
Yeah, he's one of the few alphas in the league, I'd say.
I'm also a Nico Collins fan. Big fan. Was for a lot of the year a top 5 wide receiver prior to his injury. So I'm a big fan. I would definitely take him over Brian Thomas. I mean, not definitely in like a Brian Thomas is bad, but in a I think Nico Collins is a stud type of way. So I would take Nico Collins
Sure.
here.
Yeah, can't go wrong with either of them, I think. And you might be able to go wrong with David Njoku, but who knows? All right, next we'll move to most improved. Ian has second year receiver Ricky Pearsall here. Ian, why do you think Ricky Pearsall set up to see a big leap this year?
Yeah, I mean the timing of his hamstring injury, which I guess is minor, that was announced last week, doesn't really look great. But I mean, he's kind of just the most obvious choice in my roster. Like you look at the other people that I have. There's not a lot of people that can have big improvements, so that's one. But just given the season that he had last year, I mean, he got shot preseason, which I used to live around where that happened, and
Oh,
to
wow.
imagine that happening in broad daylight would be fucking crazy. Just yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, he had that. He didn't take the field until like week 7, I think. He had a couple good weeks, but he also had a stretch of the season where he was just not used at all. So I kind of look at those as like the ups and downs of a rookie season. But I mean, he did end the season on 2 hot weeks, which is a good sign. They've kind of retooled their offense, not necessarily around him, but like Debo's gone. Brandon Ayuk's going to be back maybe at the beginning of the season. Um, they just re-signed Kittle, and they're kind of working him as a part of that plan. So I think just given the rest of my team, this guy makes the most sense to be the most improved.
Yeah, I would say you're definitely not alone in that thought. I feel like a lot of people really like Pearsall this year to take that next step in the NFL here. And looks like Reed here also agrees with that. Reed, do you have anything else to add on Mr. Pearsall?
Yeah, I don't really like Ricky Pearsall that much, but Ian's point of I don't really know who else would fit this for him was more applicable here. Like a lot of his players are either like established studs or like hot garbage. So Ricky Pearsall was kind of the only one that fit here, and I do see a path there as a Juwan Jennings stan myself. I hope he's not the most improved because that probably comes at the expense of Jennings, but I could also see a world where, a first round pick in a good offense has a big leap in a second year after again missing a huge chunk of the year last year. So I see the path. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm convicted in it.
Okay, makes sense there. Yeah, definitely. There is definitely a way Pearsall kind of finds a way to more playing time, more receptions. So it'd be a fun one to watch this year. Cevan, you want to go next year? Or you want me to take it?
Yeah, I'll go. So with Cooper Cup, I mean, he's missed 18 games over the last 3 seasons, so he's missed an entire season's worth of games. Um, his highest finish over the last 3 years is a, a back end wide receiver two. Um, some people think he's washed. Some people think he can rejuvenate his career with a change of scenery. Right when the move happened, I was under the impression that he was done. But over the course of the offseason, he's kind of grown on me. Um, and so just with, I mean, his last few seasons in LA, it's really, it really can't get worse. I mean, he was wide receiver 38, wide receiver 40 the last 2 years. So even improving back into his back end wide receiver two uh, could really help Ian's team uh, to sort out his flex spot. So
Yeah, and I think I'm with you on Cooper Cup here. I don't have him listed anywhere on anything, but just to get my 2 cents in, a lot of vacated targets in Seattle as well with Metcalf and Lockett gone. So I'm with you there. I think Cup could definitely bounce back and be improved from last year by a good bit. So I'm with you there. For my
so good.
what's that?
So good to hear.
Yeah. For my most improved player here, I selected Isaiah Likely. And at this point, Isaiah Likely is kind of known as, an elite tight end handcuffed to Mark Andrews. But we've talked about Mark Andrews a fair bit on this pod. And I know Reed Vaughn and I have talked about him outside of here as well. And I do think Mark Andrews will be cut or traded before the season starts. And in that case, that opens up a massive opportunity for Isaiah Likely. John Harbaugh has recently come out and saying that Isaiah Likely's ceiling is being an all-pro tight end, which would just be a humongous leap for a guy who's, mostly been sitting behind Mark Andrews. I feel like we've seen each year his role grow a bit more in the offense with the Ravens here. So I think Likely could be in for a big year. What's so you gonna say something, Savan?
Wait, you can hear me?
Yeah,
How about now?
I can still hear you.
Oh my goodness, that's my bad. I was yelling at Pickles. I thought I muted myself.
Okay, no worries. Um, so yeah, Isaiah Likely, I think he will have a larger role on the offense this year with the Ravens and prove to be a real a real hit on Ian's team.
Mark Andrews getting moved or cut would be so huge for my team build. That's not
It
something we're
would.
planning. That's not something we're planning on. Honestly, hadn't even thought about until right now, but
And
we're
and
praying.
I did try trading for him a little bit during the draft there, but you seem pretty stuck on keeping him, which totally respect.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get in that when we get in my tight end room, but it's thin, and he's my lotto ticket. So
Yeah. All right. Well, moving right along, let's talk about sleepers. Just talked about Cooper Kupp as the most improved player. Ian, I'm sure you have some similar thoughts as to why he's a sleeper.
yep. I mean, Cevan, good to see you come around on it. I know we had an interesting text exchange about Cooper Cup a couple months ago where you seemed pretty out. So welcome to the camp. Um, I waffled with him on being most improved, um, but I think he just makes the most sense as sleeper in terms of a market value thing. Like the only fantasy football like guru math nerd that I respect care about, JJ Zacharyson. He's putting them in like the 60s for dynasty, like 50s for redraft. KeepTradeCut has him really high up there, and that just really doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Like Reed has talked about a lot in past pods about how injuries aren't really like predictive season over season. Like just because you're hurt one year doesn't mean you're gonna be hurt the next. And like,
The
yeah,
man of culture.
this guy's been hurt a lot. Yeah, I know. I listen to every pod. Um, but this guy's been hurt a lot every year. But when he is on the field, he is fucking insane, and he's good. You're like, you're scared. I'm scared to play against him. He's a threat to give you 20 or more. And with a new home, I mean, he might not get the volume that Matt Stafford was giving him. He's not going to get the offensive prowess that the Rams had. But I mean, he's still the talent that he is. So if he can stay healthy, if he can bounce back, I'm very happy to have him as a flex option.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's totally defensible as someone you can roll out in the flex, at least at the start of the year. And if things go awry, then adjust from there. So totally see him as a good sleeper here. Okay. So next we have Swan has Ricky Pearsall as a sleeper, Reed has David Njoku, and I have Rashad White as a sleeper. I'll go ahead and start here, being that we haven't talked about Rashad White too much yet. Rashad White, he's been, mostly forgotten about, it seems, in this Tampa offense. Bucky Irving is everyone's new shiny toy, really hot commodity in redrafts right now. But I think it's important to remember that Rashad White finished as running back number 22 last year, and that wasn't a loaded early uh, productive season from him last year. He produced throughout the season, even when Bucky Irving was going off, he still got his as well. I don't think he will be what he has been in years past, but I think he will still get plenty of touches in Tampa. And if Bucky goes down, he will be in line for more touches, probably Sean Tucker as well. But I think for a bench running back, presumably for Ian, Rashad White is a perfect fit for that. And I think he will be starting in multiple games for Ian potentially, and he will be a totally capable running back to do that. And so I think people are sleeping on Rashad White. They're writing him off like he's a fantasy zero, and I just don't agree with that. I think he could still be in for a running back finish within the 20 to 30 range there. So I still like Rashad White, especially for his price here. He's a great sleeper for Ian's team, in my opinion.
I've come around on Rashad White. I was pretty out on him, but the more I looked into him, the more I came in as a good RB3. So I'm a fan of this one.
Wow, that's big. I mean, you were telling me the other day how buns Rashad White was,
Yeah,
so
you and Savan were able to change my mind on him, so
wow.
I'm a
Wow, big
fan.
of you to admit that live on air here.
I
How
always
about
admit when I change my mind. I'm willing to adjust with new
that's
information.
respectable. I'll just let you continue with David Njoku here, Reed, and talk a bit about him as a sleeper.
Well, I waffled with him for my MVP, but I chose to go with Sleeper instead. I For a lot of the reasons that Savan said, I think he makes more sense as a sleeper. Like you said, you're looking at like a back end tight end one with a lot of upside. If assuming the Browns are going to be trailing a lot this year. If Flacco was playing in particular, he and Flacco had quite a connection in the end of 2023. Cost me a redraft game that year when he dropped second most he's ever had in his career against me. That's always fun. He's just a really good tight end. And again, this team's gonna be trailing a lot, throwing the ball a lot. And outside of, Judy for sure and potentially Tillman, there's not a whole lot else going on there. So I'm excited to Njoku is someone that I feel like is a little bit underrated. So I'm a fan of him going into the year.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like Njoku's kind of slept on year in, year out, even for as productive as he's been. So totally agree with you there. So I'm noticing here, Savan, you and Ian had your most improved players and your sleepers flip-flopped here. So you have Ricky Pearsall as your sleeper. Why do you see him as a sleeper more so than a more most improved player? Savan
Maybe he's on Pickles duty.
might be. I'm going to take it that
Hello?
you there?
Yeah, sorry, it was muted. We're good now. But no, so as far as the sleeper, um, in the difference between the sleeper and the most improved, I feel like they go hand in hand. I didn't really have a reason why they were backwards, but touching on Ricky Pearsall, pretty much everything Ian said, without trying to take all his points, they invested that first round pick in him last year, and then just the void in targets with losing Debo and losing Ayuk for up to half the season. Uh, I guess he's more so since he missed so much of last season, uh, and he didn't really do a whole lot consistency wise until those last 2 weeks of the year. Um, he's kind of like an afterthought to some people, maybe not in the dynasty community, but maybe as a redraft perspective. But I see all the world for him to take a step and be the feature wide receiver. I know they're going to have Kittle probably be their one in the offense, but he could hopefully not for Reed's sake. He's the wide receiver one, but he could be there. He could be their one by midseason by the time they get Ayuk back. And then by the time they get Ayuk back, if they're cooking, which everything they probably should, then Pearsall will be good.
All right. Next up, we're going to go ahead and move to the best value here. We mentioned him a little bit earlier, but Ian has Brian Thomas Jr. Ian, tell us what you're loving about BTJ and his value.
Yeah. Um, so in terms of how I acquired, Chase Brown was also in the running for this. Just grabbing him at the 11th really was like the rock for my success last year. I had a shaky running back room and he stepped up and carried it. But I got to use this to highlight probably the trade that I'm most proud of, maybe ever. Um, like when I traded for Josh Allen, I was trading a lot, but I was trading for a known commodity. When I made this trade, I think I probably shocked a lot of people because I was overpaying for an unknown commodity. And exactly what that was he went off the board. I immediately texted Sandy and said, "I want him." And I offered him my 15th and the very next pick, which I had. And he said no. And then I threw in my second for the next year. And all of those ended up being Travis Kelce was the next pick, Gus Edwards was the 15th pick, and the 209 was Jalen Milrow. And I think if you look at those three, you would ship those for Brian Thomas right now in a heartbeat. Um, so, uh, I mean, he scored 280 something points last year, was a huge reason for the success I had. I'm very proud of planting my flag and calling my shot and going and doing it.
Yeah, this was a great pick here. I actually fully agreed with you. I had Brian Thomas as well, so I'll just continue off that. Looking at Malik Neighbors, who was picked at the 3-3 and also had a great year, but Brian Thomas also being another rookie wide receiver stud going there at that 6-8 and you scooping him right up. I mean, he went after Michael Pittman, Zay Flowers, DK Metcalf. And I think Brian Thomas now would probably go in that 2-3 second, third round range of a dynasty startup. So I totally agree with you there. You're absolutely correct in that you'd make that trade for Brian Thomas Jr. every time. And I was someone who was not super high on him coming out of LSU. I thought, Neighbors was the premier option there, and everything else was not as good as Neighbors. But evidently, Brian Thomas Jr. had his last year, and couldn't agree with you more that, where you got him and how you got him is absolutely a steal, and no doubt one of the anchors on your team.
I was definitely shocked when that trade went down. I thought it was a massive overpay. I didn't I didn't know much about them, about rookies last year, like other than just what you would know for like a redraft league. So I didn't, have any real thoughts other than that, he was I think he was the 18th pick, 21st pick, some in the NFL draft like that. And this dude just traded a haul for him. So, I was definitely shocked, but I'd say it worked out. When you're convicted, get your guys in it feels a lot better to get your guys in a good deal than go for someone maybe you didn't like as much. So I respect it.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely. Sorry, were you gonna say something, Ian?
nope, just agreeing.
Okay. Well, Savon, Reed, I'll let you guys tag team talking about Chase Brown here as the best value. What are you guys liking about his how Ian required him?
I think just the fact he got him in the double digit rounds as I know people were like torn between him and Zach Moss at a point. I don't quite remember where Zach Moss went, but I do know that Chase Brown took over once Zach Moss went out with injury. He was just he got every single running back touch, and him finishing top 10, um, solidifying himself as the RB1 for that team, and then them not making a significant investment to replace him, uh, gives you all the hope or all the faith that he'll be good to go as a low end RB1, high end RB2 option uh, for at least this next season.
Yeah, obviously the value itself, like getting an RB1 at that range, like smash. I remember I messaged Ian in the beginning of the year when Zach Moss was still playing to ask about Chase Brown because I was like, oh, this guy looks explosive. I like to see that, and nothing ever materialized. I didn't have a whole lot of conviction in it, but when my eyes saw him, he was great. But then the funny part is when he started to break out, the efficiency tanked, but he was just getting so many touches, so many targets, and in a good offense that was scoring touchdowns, like he was just a monster. So yeah, this was a huge, and like Ian said, his running back room was so thin last year. He needed somebody like this to step up and just be a hit for him. And Chase Brown did it, and that ended up, being a huge part of why he was the top scoring team in the league last year. And now he's hoping for hopefully a second one this year with his two rookie picks. But yeah, Chase Brown, huge, huge value, and I'm a huge fan of him going into this year as well.
Well, real quick, let me ask you guys a question. How far do you think Chase Brown and Zach Moss went in the inaugural? Unless you know, then don't answer.
I
But
do
how far?
know.
I
I think
Okay,
don't.
Zach Moss went in front of him, didn't he?
Tyler?
Is that the question? Who went first?
No, how far apart did they go?
I'll say 4 rounds.
They went 6 picks apart.
Yep,
Zach,
Zach
Oh
Moss was
wow.
later.
yeah, Zach
Oh,
Moss went
really?
6 picks after Chase Brown. So that just tells you what like it was a 50-50 split last year
I,
on before going into the season on who you were betting on. Kind of like the Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir situation.
like every year in fantasy football, there's always like a veteran running back who just kind of like stumbles into a starting spot and people are high on him just because of the fact that he's currently the starter. Like your Mike Davises, Alexander Madison, people like that, where a veteran just stumbles into it and it just like never works out. And obviously, again, if people would have thought that, Chase Brown would have gone a lot further ahead of him, but Zach Moss is just like that quintessential veteran that people take because he stumbled into a starting spot, and it just feels like it never works out.
Hey, Zach Moss had a good 2023.
Well, yeah, but yeah, and they signed him to a contract, but I don't think
Yeah,
anyone thought like
yeah,
he was going to be a banger this year. Like it was
right.
mostly like he's a solid running back in a good offense that's in like kind of similar to Devin Singletary, except he was in a bad offense. But like, yeah, I Chase Brown
I
had all the opportunity and looking forward to him this year too.
Yeah, I take your point. I see what you're
Ch
saying.
Chase Brown was a huge bet going into the year because his rookie year, he only combined for looks like 350 total yards.
Well,
And
they had Joe Mixon to be fair, so they had like a true workhorse on the team at that
yeah,
point.
so it was just
Beast.
it was just a shot in the dark and it paid off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was kind of just the product of like a general philosophy that I like to follow, which like Reed hit it on the nose by talking about, you know, how a veteran always seems like they're going to be the starter just because they're there. But I like to take guys who are the second option in ambiguous backfields, right? So like you have a veteran, if you have a rookie or a first or second year player who's a pass catcher and is behind that person, generally those people have good hit rates. So that this year it was just Chase Brown. I got him in a couple of redraft leagues too
Well,
for the same reason.
especially like in a you add in the fact that everybody knew the Bengals were going to be a good offense too. Like the fact that they were in a shootout every week was just kind of a cherry on top. But ambiguous backfield in a really good offense that's going to score a lot. Like that's money right there.
Yep. Aaron Jones had the same thing, like his rookie year.
Well,
Actually, I guess Jamal Williams was also a rookie. Never mind. But
bit of insight there from some of the brightest minds in the league. So there you go, pod listeners. That's free advice. So let's keep it moving here and talk about my favorite category, the overrated category. I've talked a little bit about him, but Ian, you have Nico Collins as an overrated player here. What made you choose him, or were you just kind of forced to pick someone?
yeah, I alluded to this earlier when I picked him as my most likely non QB MVP. But this one is also just kind of a market value thing. Like Nico Collins is a stud, but he's a big like what if guy, and that's just because of health. Like he put up 17 something points per game last year when he was playing, but he also missed 6 7 games. So if he stays healthy, he's gonna be a freak. But you know, in a lot of dynasty rankings, you'll see him top 8, top 10, top 12, redraft, maybe even higher, right? And to put that kind of value on someone who has shown a lot of flashes but hasn't been able to get it done over the course of a full season into the playoffs when you need them is just where the overrated tag comes in. So don't get me wrong, he's not for sale. He's not like someone I'm upset to have. I'm super glad I have him on my team, but just in terms of pure market value versus production, there's a bit big of a delta there to earn the title.
I thought you just said like 3 slides ago that you liked my point about past injuries not predicting future injuries.
I do, but I'm just saying, like, you know, that's just from market value versus what he's done. I need to see it before he gets like the rankings that he has.
I agree that is I think what you're saying is true, Reed, but at a certain point, it becomes where it's like you can't ignore the injuries any longer.
So we were talking about Cooper Cup a couple of slides ago being a badass this year, right?
Well, he was a sleeper badass.
Oh, so sleeper badass. That's
Yeah,
different.
come on. Yeah, if he's injured, no one knows, and he's just a sleeper.
SMH.
Okay, we'll keep moving here. Cevan is in agreement here with Nico Collins being overrated. Cevan, do you have any other thoughts about Nico Collins?
Yeah, so obviously everybody knows Nico Collins is a dog. He's one of the most talented receivers in the league, but he's never played a full season. He's only had one true year of consistent dominance, which was 2023. And during that time, he missed a game in the fantasy playoffs. And then the very next game, he was under 50% snaps in the fantasy playoffs. So when you need him most, he's not there. He can help you out um, during the regular season, but and I know we've just talked all this injury stuff. It's just what Ian was saying, like the price you have to pay to get him versus what he's truly done in his 4 years in the league are kind of in balance. And I think just where he's rated is if everything goes right, he plays 17 games and all that stuff. So he's a great player. He's just a little overpriced.
Got to
Fair
show it.
enough. Reed, I'll go to you last here, so I'll step in and talk about how I think Ricky Pearsall's a little bit overrated. I know you guys all had Ricky Pearsall elsewhere, but I'm gonna be the lone man on this one and say Ricky Pearsall's just a bit overrated. Again, this was Ian's team's a little bit difficult just because, like Reed said, it's established stars or rookies or players who could be dropped, etc. So Ricky Pearsall fit here in the overrated category for me. I think, you know, Ian, you touched on it a bit, but there's some real pieces in this 49ers offense with Brandon Ayuk and Kittle and McCaffrey and so on. Juwan Jennings, sorry, Reed. And I think Ricky Pearsall might be a little bit buried this year. I know he had his stretch of games that were pretty good at near the end of last season. I'm just not quite ready to believe in that sample size. I know he was a first round pick. I don't think it's a straight line to just mark Ricky Pearsall as an improved player automatically or a sleeper. I think he could be pretty boomer bust, and you could be looking at, you know, several single digit scoring weeks here for Pearsall. And I don't think that's how he's being valued right now. So he's a bit overrated for me. He's fine as a depth piece, flex once in a while, but right now I don't view him as much more than that. And I don't think I'm with consensus on that.
I'd agree. I'm not a Pearsall fan. I think he probably fits here more. I just wanted to get my word in on Cooper Cup, but I also feel closer to your thoughts on Pearsall. So
Sure. Fair enough. Well, let's hear your word on Cooper Cup here because I think you have some pretty strong opinions here. And it sounds like you might be the lone man on Cooper Cup here, so let us have it.
now I'm not saying that he's going to be bad. I'm just saying that I feel like everybody here is like, oh, he's going to go out there and get 22 targets again. And like Ian mentioned it, he's not getting targets from Matthew Stafford anymore, who is the most fantasy friendly quarterback for pass catchers of all time. Statistically, he is. Second, he has been hurt. Not saying he's going to get hurt, but I'm saying that being at the age he is, injuries can cause diminishing ability, losing a step, whatever that be. And the volume almost assuredly will go down, given that he's now behind JSN. Sam Darnold is quarterback instead of Matthew Stafford. I just don't see a world where Cooper Kupp's like a really good wide receiver anymore. Like you think about everything he did for the Rams franchise, the seasons he had there, and they just cut him. They didn't restructure, they just cut him. So if the Rams don't want to keep him around, I'm inclined to believe that they're right, that this dude's probably washed. So again, I still think there's a world where he, puts up flex value or, borderline like 20 wide receiver 20 to 24, but I don't see much more upside than that. I see him much more as like potentially a flex option, some big weeks, but you could be in for some empty weeks as well.
I will say if he did finish wide receiver 20 through 24, that'd be his highest finish in the last 4 years. So
Agreed.
Yeah.
that's just
Uh,
why I had him in a different category.
only thing I got to say about that is I don't disagree that those downsides are well within his range of outcomes. Like there is a lot of downside with this guy. I just mean like in terms of the title of overrated, like I feel like he's very properly rated. Like I would have a hard time selling him to any team in this league, especially for a price that I want. And I think that like that's just kind of what goes into like what overrated means is like I don't think people value him higher than what he actually is. I think he's looked at as like a guy with a lot of issues.
That's fair. I don't disagree with that. I think this is just the best section for me to get my piece in on Cooper
Yeah,
Cup because I
totally.
thought that was important. Um, but at the same time, but okay, so let's just have an exercise here. What off the dome rookie pick? Let's say we hadn't done our draft yet. What's the latest rookie pick you would trade him for in terms of his value? Like if you had to place him, like would you trade Cooper Cup for pick 210 straight up?
E- yeah.
Would you trade him for 3-1?
No. I think
Okay.
I think I think in this rookie class, I mean there were some reaches and oh, this is probably a good time. Trent, I should apologize to you. That was a terrible pick, but I put too many laughing emojis in that message, so my bad. Got to keep a good relationship with all my league mates. Anyway, I think there was like in terms of like my big board, I think there was kind of a drop off around like 209. So 210 is probably right around the latest I would go.
Interesting. Yeah,
That's fair.
I especially and again within the context of your team where you're obviously gunning for a championship as soon as possible. Like I don't think it's a bad piece by any means to have for you. I just don't think that I see the upside you guys do.
Yeah, and that's fair.
Well, that was pretty awesome. We got a Trent mention in the overrated section of Ian's team. So,
I had it in my notes. I had to get it out somewhere.
no, this perfect place. Yeah, I think Cooper Cup, as we've talked about a little bit at length here, might be the most polarizing player on your team, Ian, here. So, and like you said, definitely has a lot of range of outcomes. So,
My thoughts on him have nothing to do with me getting burned by him in 2023. Completely
mm,
mutually exclusive.
mm, we'll see. I tend to doubt that, but all right. Well, let's talk about droppable players. When we talked to Ian a little bit earlier this week, Ian said he had to choose from as many, and I know we have a variety here. Ian, you selected Noah Fant, notably in the Iowa Hawkeye uniform here. Why is Noah Fant still on the squad?
I love seeing him in the Hawkeye uniform in the thumbnail here. Um, yeah, I got a lot of people on my team that it could be on waivers tomorrow, and I'd be fine with that. But like, I guess he was the guy that I went with just because I have four tight ends on my team, and you're only gonna start one. I don't have two that are good enough to start in a flex position in tight end premium format. So, like, I wouldn't drop Isaiah Likely. It'd be between him and Tyler Conklin, and I'd give the edge to a guy who just got into a new situation with a good quarterback and a good coach, which is Conklin on the Chargers. I mean, I could drop Jaleel McLaughlin for sure, but my running back room is thin, and am I going to get someone better than him on the wire? Probably not. Like Noah Fant, he's given mid hundreds every year, which is like not really startable, and like I don't
Seahawks
know.
also added Elijah Arroyo.
Yeah, they did, but am I gonna get someone better than him on the wire? Probably not. Can I sell him to anyone? Definitely not. So I might as well just fucking hold him, even though
He's
yeah, he could be on the wire.
he's good for morale.
Sure, yeah, go Hawks.
All right. Well, Reed, Cevan, and I had two different players combined here. Cevan and Reed went with Ray McLeod there, and I selected Elijah Mitchell. I'll let you, Cevan and Reed, start here. Talk about Ray McLeod, Atlanta Falcon wide receiver. Reed, let's just start with you, and Cevan, if you have any thoughts, feel free to follow up.
I don't really know why he's rostered. There's definitely better people on the waiver wire than Ray McLeod. So that's my point.
Yeah. I mean, it took him 7 years to surpass 40 receptions and 300 yards. Um, I mean, this should be a live drop,
Yeah, I was
if
gonna
I'm
say
being
that'd be, that'd
honest.
be that'd be pretty awesome if we get a live drop here, Ian.
Drop Ray McLeod.
If you feel pressured.
Add Malachi Corley.
it
What?
took
Malachi Corley's still on a roster.
it took Ray McLeod 7 years to break out because he was busy working on his banger rap album that he dropped last year with Darren Waller.
Oh, I didn't
Okay,
know that.
exactly.
Never mind. I take back my droppable.
It's
But like,
it's like six songs and there's like two that might pass the test of I can play this at a function and people might not know that it's a real singer.
yeah.
But
But like, on a serious note, if we last year, obviously his most relevant year, didn't eclipse 100 yards a single time and had one touchdown, like drop him, or I'll literally manually move him off your team.
Oh, that'd be brutal.
Like, there has to be better players.
I was just gonna say, I definitely think there
Yeah,
are better
who on the
players.
wire
Efton Chisholm, pick him up.
The
who on the
the
wire is I mean, he gave me like I think I started him like once, honestly. He probably gave me double digits like at least five or six times. Like who am
Legit
I gonna get from that?
Gabe
Uh,
Davis,
Gabe
no,
Davis, Jordan Whittington.
Malachi Corley.
Jordan Whittington objectively had a worse season.
but he's like 4 years
Yeah,
younger.
Sure,
yeah.
but I mean,
The droppable section is like has been tough because like again the question is there anybody better on the wire? And like up until now it's always been like yeah they're probably like the bottom guy on your roster, but you're probably not finding anybody better. There's definitely better players on the
here,
wire than
tell you
Ray
what, I
McLeod.
I,
I just submitted a waiver for someone else, so we'll see before this pod drops.
let's
Let's
go.
go. Well, actually, we won't see.
Don't they run
Oh
on
yeah, yeah,
Sundays?
yeah. My
Yeah,
bad.
yeah,
I
yeah.
thought
All
you.
right.
I
Okay.
heard before the pod ends.
Well, I selected Elijah Mitchell here. He was relevant a few years ago, sure, but He signed with the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm just now seeing
Yeah, it's pretty awesome,
a
isn't it?
Chiefs logo on the 49ers helmet. That's pretty good. Listen, the Chiefs have a running back room with a bunch of faces. Who really knows who is behind Isaiah Pacheco? I wouldn't be surprised if Steele, Kareem Hunt, or Elijah Mitchell. I guess Elijah Mitchell just signed there, but who knows who the backup is in that room or who's getting
Rashard
touches.
Smith.
Yeah, Brashard Smith, who they
My
just
guy.
drafted. Good point there, Cevan.
Pick
I just
413, if anyone was wondering.
nice. I think Elijah Mitchell is probably at best the third running back on this depth chart. So I think he's completely droppable, and I echo some of the same sentiments that there might be someone better on the waiver wire.
I personally would push back on that. I think Elijah Mitchell, when he's healthy, is an explosive runner, and the Chiefs had the least explosive running attack in all of the NFL last year. They signed him, not to a big contract, but for a reason. So I would argue that he would be first up if Pacheco, again, he's not going to get 25 touches, but in a 15 to 18 touch a game, like I could definitely see that from him. So I would push back on him being droppable, but he also has Ray McLeod, so there's just a more droppable player, but definitely at the bottom of his roster.
Reed, those are my thoughts exactly on Elijah Mitchell.
hmm
Okay. I'm just
So
thinking you saw Kareem have success last year with them.
Kareem had
Carson,
success because he was just running up the middle and getting those hard yards. Like his explosive run rate was like abysmal, and that hurt the Chiefs. That's why they couldn't score points, is because everything was dink and dunk. Everything was 4 to 5 yards. There was no like, I believe Kareem had like 120 plus yard run all of last year. So I do think Elijah Mitchell was brought in for a reason, and again, one of the most injury riddled players over the last couple of years. But I do think there's a role for him in the right situation, and again, hopefully a better offense this year.
okay. Savon, did you have any follow-up thoughts?
oh, we're good.
Okay, cool. Well, I had a question here. I have over under 3.5 droppable players on Ian's team.
The tough
I'm
scene.
excluding the taxi squad, so don't talk about Marcus Yarns.
Marcus Yarns.
So
I'll take
don't
the under.
okay, as I said, don't overthink it too much and deliberate what is and isn't droppable, but just off the dome. Savon, you say under 3.5.
I I I think Ray is probably the only droppable one at this point right
So
now.
you think Noah Fant is rosterable?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd still probably take the under two, but I'd probably settle around like 3 players.
Yeah, I have three guys as well, so I'd take the slight under.
Ian, are you taking the over here? Are you sticking with us and going under 3.5?
This is kind of hard actually because like realistically, you could drop Jaleel, Ray McLeod, Conklin, and Noah Fant, but like I'd probably keep one of those guys, so I'll go under.
There's definitely not four better players on the wire than them. That's for sure.
Yeah,
One, maybe two, potentially, but four
Right.
would be a lot.
Yeah.
as of right now, like there are guys that are going to turn out better than those four, but like with the knowledge that we have right now, probably not.
Sounds good. Fair enough. All right. Well, with that, our accolades are finished. Let's go ahead and just jump into the positional groups here. Maybe the most straightforward group here. Quarterbacks, we have MVPs, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, and not an MVP, Daniel Jones on the Indianapolis Colts. I don't have many other thoughts on this room as we've kind of talked about the main characters here. Does anyone else have anything else they'd like to add about the quarterback room here?
I appreciate that trade that we made
They
for
gave you a pick for Daniel Jones.
Yeah,
yes.
I
Um,
needed to do that.
no, yeah, that's fair. It's a very fair, fine trade. You get a potential starter. That worst case scenario, he's I mean, he's a rushing quarterback. So worst case scenario, which obviously you never want to see him in your lineup, but it's all
Yeah.
right. But yeah, I mean, great room, best room. Um, yeah.
If Daniel
Reedy,
Jones starts more than two games for him this year, the 2 weeks that they're on bye, his season will be some scary times. It's not over, of course, but definitely some
Yeah.
scary times if he's starting more than 2 weeks for him.
that'd be scary times for you too,
I,
right?
I'm no, because he's my QB3, but I'm saying if he starts more than either of them just being on bye, then
Yeah,
his
yeah.
season's going to be in trouble.
I see
Not in
what you're saying.
trouble, scary.
Yeah.
And a great trade for him. Like with the room he has, a mid fourth is basically just a blindfolded dart throw for potentially a starter. Uh, Great trade, but we hate Daniel Jones now, so.
Anything else here from you, Ian, or should we?
Yeah, I mean, I won't take too much time on this, but I can elaborate a little on my room. Like, obviously, my brand is being like the two elite QB team, right? Like, I made a point to do that in the inaugural draft. I built my team around doing that. But I will say, like, it definitely worked better than I expected last year. And this graphic says QB3 for Josh, but I'm pretty sure he was QB2 in our league format. Anyway, like those guys put up 800, almost I think like almost 900 combined points, and I cannot bet on doing that every year. Like regression to the mean is a very powerful force, and I expect that to happen this year. So I did kind of have to go out and build around them this year. And I did that by having the two extra quarterbacks that I had, Mike Penix, who I took late last year and put him on my taxi, and Bryce Young, who I got from James for fucking $20.
Worst trade in league history.
Well, up there for sure. Uh, but like, I mean, ideally, I do have three starters, but I would have been doing the rest of my starting roster a disservice by not liquidating them. And I wasn't going to go out and sell Bryce Young and Mike Penix for pennies, but like, I was happy with the price I got for them, and I needed to improve at the areas that I use them to improve at. Like my running back room at the end of last year, like RB2 was ETN. I don't even know who was RB3. Uh, and to go out and turn those guys into the 103 and 105 and have them land me the Hampton and Henderson, the 2 and 3 RBs in this class. I needed to do that. I also turned Garrett Wilson into DK into Nico. That's an upgrade. Um, so like, yeah, ideally I have three, which is why I was willing to send a fourth for the chance that Daniel Jones is something, which is highly unlikely, but I wouldn't feel totally comfortable just having two. So for the price of a mid fourth, I don't care. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm happy with my room. I'm happy with how the unexpected depth of last year turned into better starting rosters or better starting players in my roster elsewhere. So, yeah.
Well said.
All right. Following up the strongest positional group here for Ian's team, let's go ahead and go to the running backs. From top to bottom here, we have Chase Brown, Omarion Hampton, Travion Henderson, Austin Eckler, Elijah Mitchell, Jaleel McLaughlin, Marcus Yarns, Phil Maffa, and Rashad White. Who does anyone want to start here? Otherwise, I'll start here actually. I think this room is it's a little bit scary at the start of the season, but with two, like as Ian said, two of the top three running backs on his squad in Amari Hampton, Travion Henderson, I think he set up himself up for a good chance that at least one of these guys hits. And when they do, we've seen each year there's rookie running backs that show out, and it's typically the ones with that higher draft capital. And so, sure, it's easy to talk about Najee Harris or Ramondre Stevenson, the incumbents to those respective franchises in the Chargers and Patriots. But with young, highly athletic running backs like this who have lighter wear on the tires, I think Hampton and Henderson will, come on strong. And, as we get closer and closer to the playoffs and into the playoffs, that's possibly where Hampton and Henderson will be at their best. So to pair that with Chase Brown, who, as Cevan mentioned, was not replaced this offseason, I think Ian will be just fine starting two of those three guys week in, week out. And if, the injuries happen, I'm totally fine, as I mentioned, with Rashad White as a sleeper and a good depth piece to start if he needs. With Austin Eckler, I think a very reasonable get on the waiver wire there. Someone who performed with Brian Robinson last year in Washington. So I know it's not the strongest running back room. We talked about Deshaun's running back room last week and how strong it was, but I think Ian's is totally valid. And I think there's a real possibility we look at this running back room next year, and it's considered one of the best in the league if Hampton and Henderson really show out.
I think I'm a little bit lower on this. Like, as we talked about, Cooper Kupp's a great fit for his team because he's trying to win it all right now. I feel like investing super highly in two rookie running backs, neither of which have a clear week one workhorse role, I feel like that can be detrimental, especially when you have picks at that point. You could have just traded one of them for a player you know is going to produce from the jump. Getting off to a tough start. Now, again, not that the running back room is going to sink his team in the first, however long it takes for one of them to take over their backfield, but it feels like this is a weaker room in the first couple of weeks, and the last thing you want to do, as Ian said, is be at a level 8 panic level because none of your running backs are performing in the first, week or two. So I think by the end of the season he should be fine, but I don't want to overlook the first part of the season where he has one like established starting NFL running back for a team that's trying to win it all this year. So again, a great room. Looking forward to it in 2026. Don't want to see it in 2026, but I feel like 2025, at least for the first half of the season, could be kind of sketchy for him.
Yeah, but I mean, assuming he makes the playoffs, which is not like you can't just say he's going to make the playoffs and it happens. But if when Ian makes the playoffs, presumably Hampton and Henderson will have an increased workload by then, kind of rendering those
Yeah.
first few weeks useless, in my opinion.
Not, I
Not
mean, not.
useless, but
I think it, and again, the massive advantage that comes with having the bye, and not having a running back in those first couple of weeks is a huge hindrance to acquiring the bye, which again massively increases your odds to win the championship by not risking your team
100%.
of to potentially like anybody, as Ian saw, by getting incredibly unlucky against Cevan in the playoffs. His team was dropping 190 every week, and then suddenly he drops a 120. You can be the best team in the league, have an off week in the first round of the playoffs, and then you're done. So again, not as far as by the end of the year, I think his team will be in a great spot. But those first couple of weeks cannot be understated and how important they are. Week one win matters just as much as a week 14 win in the standings. So again, very scary room for 2026, but I would be a little scared if I were him for the first couple of weeks of 2025 is all.
Yep. Savan, I'm gonna let you say your piece before I say all of mine first. I just want to echo what Reed said. Like, Reed, you're exactly right. And I mean, ironically enough, that's pretty much exactly what happened with my team last year. Like, I was 7-7 and barely squeaked into the playoffs. And, going into week 8, I was 3-5. And part of that is because it took so long for Chase Brown to establish himself as the alpha that he was. So, like, that is definitely a risk that I'm opening my team up to. And I'll talk about that more when I totally have the floor. But Savan, you got it.
Yeah, so tying all of that in, personally, I think that having Rashad White is great for this exact scenario because, like you've all said, Hampton and Travion, we have no idea what their workload's going to look like week one, but I think we all have a good idea of what that Bucky Irving Rashad White split is going to be. And we think Bucky's workload will increase, but I don't think it'll be enough to keep Rashad completely off the field. And he's a guy who is PPR friendly, and Baker checks it down. So if he's getting 12 to 15 touches still, and but Bucky's still getting the majority, I think that's a perfectly fine RB2. Um, and so personally, I love the dynasty outlook for this room. Like we've all said, 2026 and beyond, it'll be a great room. But for the early part in the season, personally, I think it's great that Ian has Rashad White. So
Ian, your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, you guys are all bringing up really good points about this. I mean, yeah, the story of my running back room is really a story of the rookie draft. Like, I know KeepTradeCut rankings aren't everything, and they're really just a reference. I don't hold a ton of the weight to them. But if you were to do that graphic before the rookie draft, like my running back room was 12th, and now it's third. And I don't know that I agree that it's third, but Reed said in the mock draft recap pod that the draft turned my running back room from a weakness into a strength. And that's like the whole goal of what we had to do. I could have used that capital to go out and get an established player, but like I don't really know who that would have been, and I probably would have had to structure a deal in a way that might have hurt other parts of my team. So I just saw a deep class, talented guys that were available, and I jumped on them. So there's definitely the risk that they don't pick up speed. There's definitely the risk that they don't turn out. There's definitely the risk that they get hurt. And I'm left with Rashad White, who I probably believe in a little less than it sounds like you three. Um, but I do think that this room can get it done. And I'm much more excited about it going into this year than I was last year.
My
I
my bit
I
my biggest go ahead, Tyler.
I was just saying I totally agree with you that trading for an established player might have been a little bit difficult and would have potentially hurt you other places. So if I were you, I would have done the exact same thing that you did here. And I, I guess going back to what you said, Reed, I think Ian's team is strong enough. Oh, Mr. Slurp over here glazing Ian's team is so strong. I think Ian's team is strong enough overall to maybe make up for what Hampton and Henderson may lack in the first few weeks there. So that's also where I'm at. But sounds like you had something else to say too, Reed.
Yeah, well, now I have something to say to that, but
Okay.
my worry with Rashad White is, and again, as I said, since our we had a long discussion last night, I've come around some on him being a solid RB3. I wouldn't necessarily say if I have a lot of confidence in him because A, as we said, like I don't think Bucky Irving's ever going to be like an 80% like a Chase Brown type guy where he gets like all of it. So there's always going to be some work left. But as you said, Rashad White's main calling card now is going to be the PPR guy, and that comes with catching touchdowns. Baker threw, I believe he threw 41 last year. Lost Liam Cohen, who's very good at his job and scheming guys open. So I'd be worried about where, is he going to get enough volume if his touchdowns go down to sustain enough to be a weekly, even if it's a low end option, like a startable option. So that's kind of my biggest worry. I'm not necessarily a huge Bucky guy. I'm just more worried about, you know, if the efficiency and the scoring goes down some, is there enough there for him to maintain that? And then my second point was I don't really, I think you guys are being a little too harsh, like with either the 102 or the 105. I think the ability to flip one of those for a plus to plus plus running back would have been very easy. Like you think about 102, like where Hampton was, you easily could have picked up someone like, not to say it again, Bucky Irving, or someone even better than that, even if they're not like a young player, like a Josh Jacobs type, where gonna be, a really good player, but maybe not the best option. And then you're trading the pick plus some, or trading the pick for a Jacobs type plus some. So that was my only worry. And then you still have a top five rookie pick on the bench waiting to take over a role. So again, I didn't have the pick. I didn't have the balls to make the trades you did. But I guess that was just my thought is again, it can't be understated how important stacking wins is to try to get that buy, especially when you're going all in, not necessarily just for this year, but as soon as you can to try to get a championship.
Yeah, I'll give you that you definitely can turn the draft capital that I had into an established player. I think if I was weak at like a wide receiver position, it would have been a lot more easy to do. But with running back specifically, like of rookies, running backs are the most likely to produce in their first year meaningfully.
Hmm.
Um, so like with the guys that are there, I was going to take the bet that they're going to produce now and also be an asset for my team in the future years if I can't get it done
Hmm.
this year.
Fully understood. Totally behind it. That was my only point. Big fan of the room overall.
Yep.
Well,
Uh,
should we
can
And
get
a
I?
go?
big Marcus Yarns fan.
I'm glad to have him on my taxi.
Did you have something else you're gonna say there, Ian?
Yeah, I was just going to use this to talk a little bit more about the rookie draft specifically. I want to say that like I was so happy with how it went in terms of the two guys that I got. Like, I mean, Omarion went first, so we'll talk about him first. I had 103. I had to trade up to get 102. Kind of like how in the last NFL draft, not the one that just happened, but 2 years ago, the Jets, the Broncos traded up one spot with the Jets just to make sure that they got their guy Bo Nix. Like Sumner had this pick on the block. He was being shopped. I didn't want to get jumped. I didn't want to risk Sumner just taking it. So to trade, like, I think we did a 2027 2-3 swap to give up a little bit of premium just to make sure that I got the person that I absolutely needed was something that I had to do. And I was glad that I was able to do that. Um, and then going to Travion Henderson, if he wasn't there at 105, I was trading back. Like he was the guy that I was taking there. Um, Probably to try to get like RJ Harvey later. Um, but I was not going to take a receiver there. I needed to come out of this with 2 running backs. Those were the 2 guys that realistically I wanted, and I could not have been happier with how it went.
Well, yeah, like we've talked about, turn this running back room kind of into a strength for you. So very apt moves there. So I say we keep going. Let's talk about the wide receivers here. We have Brian Thomas, Cooper Kupp, Nico Collins, Dante Thornton, Emeka Egbuka, Isaac Slaw, Joshua Palmer, Ray McLeod, drop candidate, and Ricky Pearsall. Does anyone want to start here? I know one name we haven't touched on too much is Emeka Egbuka. So anyone talk about Egbuka or anyone else on this in this wide receiver room?
Yeah, I can start. I think it's a lot weaker room than I think it looks like on the surface. As I said, not a huge fan of Cooper Kupp at this point. His top two is probably, the third best with Nico Collins and Brian Thomas. We were talking about this the other day, so I have it off the dome. Probably the third best top two in the league as far as his receivers, like elite ceiling from those two. But I think we all agree the volume for Egbuka in year one, at least to start, again, is going to be uncertain. Not a huge Pearsall fan, not a Cooper Kupp fan. So I think, again, maybe I'm just lower on this room, but again, the top two is elite. The Egbuka trade was just a monstrosity. But again, as we talked about, getting your guys is part of the game, getting the guys you like, getting the guys you're confident in, that you're convicted in. So I respect the balls to get who you want, but yeah, I wouldn't say I'm a fan, but at the same time, a fan of the trade, I am a fan of the player, but yeah, not a huge fan overall, and I think it's a little bit weaker than I think he gets credit for, or doesn't get credit for.
Yeah, for me, this room leaves a lot to be desired. I see BTJ and Nico, and they're like the only two players that I feel confident in for 2025.
You still there, Cevan?
I think he's buffering.
I don't think this is a planned silence.
Well, I'll
We
just
don't know what that's going to be.
Oh,
Oh,
maybe
Can you hear me?
now we
yeah,
can.
Hello? You can hear me?
Yes,
yep, keep
yeah.
going.
Where'd I leave off?
it leaves a lot to be desired.
Oh damn. Um, well, yeah, okay. I was gonna say it leaves a lot to be desired. Um, to me, Brian Thomas and Nico are the only two things I'm confident in. And then Reed touched on Ikbuka, where we're uncertain about what his role is going to look like. And that's the same as Pearsall. And so Cooper Kupp's also while I think he can be a low one wide receiver too, there's a very realistic possibility. He's just the same guy he has been for the last couple of years and he's toast. And so that leaves you starting BTJ and Nico and then having to throw scraps together in your flex. Um, so yeah, as the high end is really high, um, it could be a concerning thing, assuming that Ian likes to start receivers in his flex. Um, I don't see much uh, certain depth from the receiver core.
Yeah, you guys are hating a little too much for my
Oh my God,
tastes.
shocker.
I think this is a great receiver room. I
Oh,
think you guys are a little too caught up in the depth between the receivers and the running backs. He has enough to put something together for flex. Egbuka, I think does produce year one. He was obviously that took him at pick 19 there, where not a lot of people were expecting him to be selected. So I think that says a lot about how Tampa values Egbuka. And with two older receivers, one coming off a big injury there, I totally am in on Egbuka this year and beyond. Ricky Pearsall, though, I think is a bit overrated. I'm not going to say he's not a useful piece and potentially could start some games here. And so I, yeah, the upside is among the highest in the league. It's superstar power. That's what you need to win championships. And he doesn't need to have a bench full of guys who are getting 8 points every week. Like, so what if he has Dante Thornton, in the wide receiver room? And I actually, Joshua Palmer, I think is someone in Buffalo who could get picks or points. I'm sorry. I'm not going to talk about him too much because he's a waiver pickup, but I think this is a good to great. This is a great wide receiver
Oh
room,
my
and you
God.
guys,
God.
you
Realistically,
guys are
Tyler,
sleeping.
question for you. Realistically, where do you think Egbuka finishes? Just roughly. Where do you think he that's realistic?
Let's just say inside or outside the top 24.
Outside,
Inside or outside the top 36.
inside.
So 25 to 36-ish. Wide receiver, like maybe
Is
flexible player.
Yeah, I think that's totally reasonable.
First number that came to my head when you said that was 35.
If he's wide receiver 35, then he's probably not a startable piece unless he does nothing for the first half of the year.
But if,
In
see,
which
I'm just,
case, again, what's he throwing in the flex then?
like I said, I think he has running backs who could start. If Henderson, Hampton, and Chase Brown are all good and startable, then you could start one of them in the flex.
I mean, that is the plan.
Who do you think wide
So,
receiver 36 was last year?
yeah, probably someone who played a lot of games.
Sorry, points per game.
Points per game. You want me to rip one?
Yeah, just rip one.
Keon Coleman.
No,
Oh.
he's way lower than that.
Oh,
Uh
Cevan, you might have a chance.
come on.
uh Josh Downs.
Actually, not Josh Downs. He's 32, so that was a good guess.
Okay, who is it?
Keenan Allen. That's why I said Cevan might have a chance because it was Keenan Allen, not because he's infinitely smarter than you. Just because he was a bear. That sounded. I was I was just saying. Never mind.
Okay.
I was not. That was not a dig at you whatsoever. That was just saying because he was on the Bears.
So yeah, I mean, and what Keenan Allen was last year was extremely inconsistent in a target whore.
And what he
So
is this year is unsigned so far.
yeah.
Okay, we're talking about old man Keenan Allen versus first
We're
round
talking about
rookie
the wide
Emeka
receiver
Egbuka.
36.
Well, we're talking about the points that the wide receiver 36
Okay,
scores.
I understand what you're saying, but that's my point. Is he doesn't need like what's wrong with
But
starting? Keenan Allen started games last year. I don't even know who had him, but
I think
Trent did, I
Trent did,
believe.
Trent started him in games, and I'm sure he helped win him some weeks.
and I'm sure he lost him some.
Sure, that's
Let,
fantasy.
let's just look at Keenan. 6'4", 20, 5'7", 9'8", 20, 26, 20, 37, 4.
To,
So
to be
just
to be
inconsistent.
to be clear, Ian said wide receiver 35. I said the range.
But yeah, all all I think all we're trying to say is after Brian and Nico, it is extremely sketchy.
I don't know if it's extremely sketchy.
Oh
No,
my
it is.
God.
There
What?
is no
Who
clear
there
path.
is a guarantee to be a solid receiver other
Okay,
I
than
you
wouldn't
could
those
say
play
two?
this.
extremely sketchy, but sketchy
You
for
could,
sure.
No,
yeah,
extremely.
sketchy. You could
Because
play this game with any team
no, you
except yours, Reed,
I
in the wide receiver
100%
room.
disagree, Tyler. I would say
yeah,
that your wide receiver room, even your, like, you look at your wide receiver room. Okay, you put all your
Yeah.
backups in, Dick. Devontae Adams is a guarantee. DJ Moore is a guarantee. Terry McLaurin's a guarantee. And Jacoby Myers, I think, is a guarantee to at least be solid, like borderline flexible, which we need to talk about still, Ian. But
Oh, I'm getting there.
so, like, there's four guys right there that I feel you can come through. Like, I take all four of those guys over every receiver in his room except for Nico and Brian Thomas.
I agree.
Okay, that's fine. I think
There's
we
just
just
no
leave it at that.
So you're glazing your Ian over yourself, your own team.
No,
Oh my
okay.
God.
I was probably misfounded in saying any other team but yours, but it's not extremely sketchy. I don't agree with that. So we
My
moving
turn.
on. Oh yeah,
What do
do you have something to say, Cody?
Yeah, I mean, my outlook on on this room is somewhere between uh Reed and Savon's and Tyler's, probably closer to Tyler's. But you know, in fantasy and in life, you should be your own biggest critic. And I definitely do see the downside with honestly each of these players. Like Brian Thomas, best guy, but you know, there's the chance that Travis Hunter takes work that made him dominant last year. There's a chance that he just straight up has a sophomore slump. Like Nico Collins, obviously injury risk. Cooper Cup, he's on a new team. He's an injury risk. He has overlapping skills with JSN. Like there's a lot of question marks there. Ricky Pearsall, odds are against him to take a jump. Ibuka, he's a total question mark because we've never seen him play football. So like all of these things are things I think about. However, I do believe in this room, like from what they've done, from the talent perspective they have. I'm I'm I think that it is a little sketchy beyond those top two, but I believe in Cup's upside. I think Pearsall is going to turn out to be something, and obviously I believe in Ibuka if I traded how I did for him, which we
Uh,
can get to.
Can I make
Ian,
one comment real quick? Sorry.
Yep.
go ahead.
It is worth noting. I'm just throwing this out there. In the games Brian Thomas played with Trevor Lawrence, he did not 9 starts from Trevor Lawrence, and Brian Thomas had 0 games at 10 targets, and the rest of the season from week 10 through 18, he only had 1 game under 10 targets. And so it was Mac Jones literally just force feeding him the ball the entirety of his stint. So
Ian, we were talking about this last night. If you could, for 2025 only, if you could only have one of Nico or Brian Thomas, which one would you choose?
Nico.
Agreed.
And
Makes
yeah,
sense.
Cevan, that's definitely something that I thought about with Brian Thomas too. But also, like you get a new coach, you get a new scheme, you get Travis Hunter. So who knows what it's going to look like? I mean, he showed that he's got the talent. I'm still fine having that in my starting lineup.
no, definitely.
Are we talking about Jacoby Myers, who's
Yeah,
not on?
he's not on your team anymore. So give us like a 2 to 3 sentence recap on why he's this huge sell.
Oh, can I do this in 2 to 3 sentences?
Okay,
Okay.
you have 4 sentences.
All right, sure. I don't know why you're so crazy about this guy because he scored 218 points. But he had his best 2 years when he was with the Raiders, and it was like barely over 200 points. And his biggest game by far came in Week 18 last year. Like Sleeper shows you the totals with all of them, but without that Week 18 game last year, he scores 190 over 14 games, which is like 13 and a half. Right? His best year was barely over 1,000 yards. 87 receptions. Like this isn't a crazy talent we're talking about. And the Raiders last year, I'm a Raiders fan. I watch all their games. They threw the ball so fucking much. Fourth highest pass rate or pass attempts, third highest pass rate. Like he was kind of their only option behind Bowers, and they could not establish the run at all. I don't know if you were Savon, can you name
Sincere
four?
McCormick.
Yep. And Amir Abdullah, Alexander Madison, and Zamir White. Those are just 4 generational bums right there. So they go out, they get Genty. They bring in Pete Carroll, who's a run heavy coach. They bring in Chip Kelly, who is a run heavy coach, just won the national championship with 2 stud running backs, Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. Like, he made his money on volume that's just not going to be there. They bring in Besh. They bring in a run heavy approach. They're going to shift the offense. I don't think he scores over 200 points this year. I'm not saying he's going to be bad. He's a good player. He's just a sell candidate, and I think this is the highest his value is ever going to be. So that's like the him side of the trade. I mean, I can move to the Igbuka side unless you want to talk about that.
No, I was just gonna say I needed it's obligatory for me to drop this line when you said if you throw out his week 18, he only scored this much. If you take out all the weeks he was good, he was pretty much bad, right?
Well, I mean, the
Week
games that
18 doesn't
count for
even matter.
fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do hear your point, heard, but at the same time, I also think A, you're getting a massive quarterback upgrade,
Sure.
which is can't be discounted. B, you're talking about Besh again, talented player, but a rookie. And C, yeah, the volume is going to be down, but the quality is going to be up. The touchdowns will be up. I mean, Jacoby Myers historically has always been weak on touchdowns, but who's he had thrown in the ball? Like, as you said, basically nobody. So I feel like in a more competitive offense with better coaching, with a better quality of targets, like again, he missed 2 games last year and he was still PPR, he was wide receiver 22 in points per game. So again, I see it. I think he's like a perfect guy to have like as your wide receiver 4, which is exactly what Tyler has him as and what he would be in your team. Again, not that I'm saying no bearing on the trade. I'm just a Jacoby Myers fan. I think he's a talented receiver.
Sure. And I mean, he got a lot of the like metaphorical pie, right? For the pie chart of their passing, he got a lot of that. Jack Bash is better than the 2 guys they had behind him last year. It was like DJ Turner and fucking Trey Tucker,
Trey
right? So he's
Tucker.
gonna get a little bit smaller slice of the pie, but the big thing is that pie is so much smaller. When you bring in Genty and a run focused
Mm.
coaching staff, They are not throwing the ball as much as they did last year, and that's where he made his money. And it's just the volume is not going to be there. He's not a guy who's going to command the. He's not a guy who's going to go out and command work to match the production that he has. So if the team shifts away from the strategy that gave him success, he's gonna decline.
I would trade off a little bit of volume for a huge uptick in the efficiency. Like Desmond Ridder was throwing in passes at one point last year. Like Aiden
Sure,
O'Connell, Gardner. Like I would absolutely drop a little bit of his total targets to get a massive increase in the efficiency of targets. Because again,
sure.
like you said, all the people that were behind him were bad. Just take all those targets and give them to Jack Besh, and then take a little bit of Jacoby Myers and give those to Besh. But I'd still massively take the increase in efficiency as opposed to we're trailing all the time. So yeah, and I agree. Obviously, Chip Kelly's going to run the ball, but I guess I'm just higher on Jacoby Myers. He's a target for me in redraft as a flex option.
That's fine, but I think you're severely underestimating how big that drop in volume is going to be because this is going to be a team that's going to establish the run. All they could do last year was throw the ball when they were behind, and that's just not going to be the case this year. There's going to be a big drop off in passing.
I guess we'll see.
All right, let's just go ahead and round out Ead's team here and talk about the tight ends. We have David Njoku, Isaiah Likely. We've talked about them a little bit. We also have Noah Fant and Tyler Conklin. Let's start with you this time, Ian. What are you thinking of your tight end room?
Yeah, I mean, this is the biggest piece of my team that leaves something to be desired. Personally, I'm a big believer in Njoku, but he has to stay on the field. Like you see that huge difference between tight end 4 in points per game and tight end 11 overall. That's just him missing time. Like when he was on the field, he was getting the ball. He's got the pedigree. He just has to stay healthy, and you know, I'm not sure that he can do that. That's not something that I'm going to bank my season on, but I also don't have a ton of other options. Like Isaiah Likely, the reason that I wasn't willing to sell him in a lot of trades is because he's my lottery ticket. He's looked like he's gotten better every year, and I'm kind of relying on him to be my backup option. But, overall, yeah, I think this is the weakest part of my team. But like Cevan said in a previous pod, tight end should be the weakest part of your team, and that's okay.
Yeah,
All
I
knowers.
I actually like Tyler Conklin as a waiver pickup. Follow the money there, and Chargers gave him some money this offseason. So I think he will get some targets this year after a pretty solid year last year in New York. So between Likely and Conklin, if something happens to Njoku or he's not performing, I think you'll be just fine to patch up that position as you need to. And inevitably, there might be some waiver wire activity as well in season.
Yeah. Before we move on to the other host, I will say like the way that I look at tight ends, especially in dynasty, but like touchdowns aren't sticky season to season. That's why Sam Laporta had a drop from his rookie year to last year. So like I want volume, right? And there's really only three elite options in terms of volume, and that's Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, and George Kittle. So outside of those three, it's kind of a crapshoot. I'm gonna take the crapshoot that has the biggest volume, which last year was clearly Njoku.
Yeah, it's a
Very
good bet.
that's valid. No, I was going to bring up Tyler Conklin too, which last 4 years, or not last year, but the 3 years prior, he had 87 targets in each of those 3 seasons, and then last year he dropped down to 72 targets. But um, yeah, he got paid to come be the tight end for the Chargers, and they're starving for anybody who can catch a pass. Um, so that definitely is a sneaky waiver wire pickup. I don't know how he's never been a top 12 tight end, which it's fairly easy to do. So, I mean, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, everything is Njoku. He's a good receiving tight end. He just doesn't stay on the field. And then likely, yeah, it is your lottery ticket. We'll see what they do. That's just a wait and see. But I think at worst, this is Mark Andrews' last year with the Ravens. So maybe
Inshallah.
yeah, you might have to wait one more year, but we'll see. But it's a fine room. I mean, yeah, I mean, you know how I feel about tight ends. It is what it is.
Reed?
I have no unique thoughts here. I'm an Njoku fan. Savon can attest I was last year. Uh, can't say I'm a huge likely fan, but in the event that something happens to Mandrews, huge fan. Conklin and Fant or whatever, not as fond of Conklin as you guys, other than a bye week fill-in. So far from the best room, but far from the worst room in the league at tight end.
Yeah. Anyone else have any other thoughts here on the tight ends?
Nope.
All right, cool. I had another question here. Just need a rapid fire response from each of you. You don't have to explain it or anything, but what position group of Ian's is most likely to cause his downfall as a favorite? I'll go ahead and start. I'll say it's the tight end room.
I'll say it's the quarterback.
I was going to say somebody has to say quarterback.
Okay, Ian?
I thought about saying quarterback just because like an injury really does screw me over. I'll go wide receiver just for all the downside reasons that we talked about when we were on that room.
Sure. All right, well, three answers there. Three different answers, I'll say. So hopefully none of that happens for Ian, or
I guess I
hopefully it
won't give
does
an
for my
answer,
sake.
Tyler.
Wait, I thought you
I
said
thought you were
quarterback
agreeing with
too.
No, no, sorry. I was going to say somebody has to say because that's the most like this his strong. Never mind.
Okay.
I would also say
Oh.
receiver
Oh, okay, okay. There you go.
because
Sounds
Cooper
good.
Kupp is questionable.
Sure. So no one's saying running back there after Ian's strong rookie draft. So let's just go ahead and move into the hot takes here. Ian, we'll start off with your hot takes. You gave us a 2-for-1 special. We'll get to the next one in a second here, but your first one reads here. One of your big quarterbacks misses time, but you still make the playoffs. You want to explain that one a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of had to dig, they're supposed to be hot takes. They're supposed to be out there. Obviously this would be a huge hit to my team because I based so much of my success on my two studs there. But I think this is a combination of like my effort to branch out a little bit at other positions. Um, like I definitely added a lot more depth, even though it doesn't like, a lot of hosts have disagreed with this and I, sometimes disagree with it myself. I've definitely added a lot of depth compared to what I ended the season with last year. And I think that I can fill in enough to kind of squeak along. Like making the playoffs and winning the championship are two different things, right? Because like even last season, I was 7-7 and made it in on points for. So like if I can miss time and still string to enough games together to win 7 games, I can still make the playoffs as long and get success there as long as both my quarterbacks are back and healthy by the time that comes around. So it's a combination of adding depth and also just like managerial prowess. Like not to toot my own horn here, but I think I'm a pretty good manager at this. And I think if that situation comes up, I'm going to find a way to just manufacture wins. Like I'm pretty confident that I'm going to find someone on the wire this year that's going to be value for my team now, long term. I'm going to make accretive trades. I think that, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, and I've got a plan going into the season, but I think I can handle taking a couple of the no's.
How many of the 14 regular season weeks, how many games could one of your quarterbacks miss and you would still say, I feel confident that I'll make the playoffs? Like before the season, if you knew one of them had to miss time, what's the most number of games that one of them could miss and you'd still feel confident in your chances to make the playoffs?
The absolute most,
Yes. Like at this point, if they miss this many games, I'll no longer feel confident that I'd make the playoffs.
I teeter somewhere between 4 and 5, but absolute most, I'll go with 5. And there is a week where I'm going to be without both of them. Week 7, I think I'm playing Sandy. I have both of them on bye. So
Honestly,
Daniel
that's
Jones, come through.
that's better. Like I'd rather have them both on the same week and just
Agreed.
take the dive that week
Yeah,
than have to go 2 weeks without one of them.
100%.
Nice. Yeah, perfectly defensible hot take there, but yeah, you're probably hoping this one doesn't, at least half of it doesn't come true. So you got another hot take here. Reads Mecca Buka outscores the previously mentioned Jacoby Myers and Ricky Pearsall outscores Reed's wide receiver Jawan Jennings. Some bold takes out of you, Ian. What are you loving about Egbuka and Pearsall?
Yep, I'll keep these relatively quick. I mean, maybe this is some confirmation bias and wishful thinking, but I think that these are both going to validate the trades I did for them. And I will say, the Ricky Pearsall and Juwan Jennings trade, I sent Jennings in a second for Ricky. I'm not going to say I don't know that I'm ready to call that one a loss, but I think that I probably could have gotten better value, especially if I were to do that today. But we talked about Jacoby Myers. I already said I think he's going to score under 200. Emeka Egbuka, he's probably a harder stretch in this end. I believe in him a lot. I mean, people don't like his landing spot for this year, but he has multiple outs to being a producer this year. Mike could get hurt. He misses games frequently. Chris Godwin could just straight up not be the same player being his age and coming back from the nasty injury that he had. Baker has shown that he can support multiple elite options in fantasy, and Emeka Egbuka just has incredible pedigree. He has the three T's that I always look for: team, target, and talent. All three of those he checks with flying colors. Uh, like what he did at Ohio State with his competition, especially his sophomore season, was unreal. So I think he's going to be a total stud, and he could put up numbers his rookie year, even more in future years. Onto the other side of the trade, I talked about Ricky Pearsall. I made him my sleeper. I mean, this take is basically just that Juwan Jennings, like he broke out last year, but he's kind of a known commodity, right? Like he had a spike year, definitely better than his other ones, but Ricky Pearsall is kind of like an unknown talent, and like he was a guy who was a first round pick. He has shown flashes of what he can be, and coming into the season, the Niners should bounce back. Like they had a down year. I mentioned earlier that regression is a mean to the is a powerful force. I think their touchdown per game totals are going to go up. I think they're going to game plan Ricky Pearsall to be a bigger part of that. He'll be a beneficiary of that. And like talent wise, like when I watch him, he reminds me of Cooper Cup, a young one. So I have a lot of faith in both these guys.
All
That's
right.
all.
I think I'd probably be more aligned with your Egbuka over Myers take than Pearsall over Jennings, but
That a
that's just
boy.
me.
Good job.
Cevan, Reed, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah,
Juwan, go ahead, Swan.
I was just gonna say I love Egbuka, his dynasty outlook. It's just I am more of a believer in 26 and beyond than 25. Obviously, there's a path for him to be uh super relevant if Godwin doesn't come back from his second season-ending injury, if Mike Evans really is finally old. Um, yeah, there's definitely a clear path for him to be the number one target earner in that offense. It's just I don't believe that's how it's going to shake out in 2025. But I love Igbuka, and he's great.
Juwan
All right.
Jennings is a baller. He's just he's good at football. I watched him all last year because I was watching the 49ers for a couple different players, and I would be surprised if that happens, but definitely not impossible by any means. Definitely a hot take, I would say. I don't know where their
That's the
redraft
difference to be.
ADPs are, but I definitely take Jennings this year.
Yeah, no doubt that this is a hot take, especially with that and in there. So, all right. Well, some good hot takes out of Ian here. Let's go ahead and move on to Savant's hot take. Reading Ian will trade both of his 26 and his 27 first round picks to try and save his season after a sub 500
Wow.
start through the first 8 weeks.
It's a bold one.
So, twofold here. Savant thinking Ian's going to come out of the gate stumbling, and he's going to go ahead and panic and trade those picks to try and save it all. Savant?
Yeah, so kind of touching all the things we talked about. We know his quarterbacks are locked. Uh, then you got question marks. I know Reed and I are somewhat on the same page on his receivers. What if Egbuka and Pearsall and Cup don't pan out? What if Henderson and Hampton aren't the lead guys for the first half of the season? Like we see a lot of rookie running backs break out in the back half of the season. What if Bucky Irving takes over all the volume and Rashad White is nothing? What if Austin Eckler is old and washed
I think that's
and
a fact.
okay, and they use Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt instead. So as I do have him as the number one in the power rankings and a favorite, there is a path to where the non-quarterbacks and non-BTJ, you get where I'm going. So anyways, getting into his schedule, I think we all view, or at least us three, we view Rob as an underdog. He's he gets Ian week one. Rob retooled this offseason, adding Brees, Mahomes, Ladd. I see Ian falling short because he's got too many rookies and too many unknowns in his lineup. Going into week two,
Do
he's
we
not beating.
okay?
He's
Do we have to
nope.
go
Let me
through
go.
all
Let
eight
me go.
weeks here?
Nope, we're not. We're
Because
not.
you told us to tell you if you're
We're not.
rambling. I don't want to go
We're
through
not.
8 weeks of his
We're not.
schedule.
We're not. Week two, I was going to give you a compliment, so I'll just switch it up. You'll beat Reed in week two now, which wasn't where I was going
I'm
with it.
fine with that.
But no, but in all seriousness, Reed will beat you week 2, so you'll be 0-2. Going to week 3 is where you pick up your first win. You'll get Cam Thorne, but then you follow right back up with me in week 4. And so when I put you to 1-3, you start getting your cupcakes. You got your Schraders and your Sandys
Wow.
of the league.
My
Uh,
standings without my two quarterbacks.
yep, no worries there. Trust.
Oh boy.
But anyways, you'll drop another one. You'll get to week 8. You'll be 3-5. And on the outside looking in, having to go, what's that? 4-2. Does that make sense?
So basically the
Roughly.
exact same start I had last year.
Yeah. And I'm just calling my shot. You got my first and you got your first. People may not view them as high assets because we'll be picking 12 and 11 again, but that's just my hot take.
Yeah.
You're going to start
Well,
slow and have to start shipping assets.
pod listeners will remember that at the beginning of the episode, Ian did say F them picks. So if he does
No,
start,
them second and beyond.
I believe the straight
okay.
quote was KTC can blow me about the picks.
There you go. So yeah, if he starts the season, I mean, I'd almost say, yeah, he's trading those picks, but it's not a guarantee he's starting that rough. Read
Thoughts?
Ian.
I'm a fan. I think this would be ideal for myself. So I'm a fan.
I think this would just be uncharacteristic of my management style, but I could
I
see
don't.
I could see the start at least.
You don't
Like
you think you would just try and stay afloat?
I mean, pretty much what I did last year.
Yeah, and you got lucky that Deshaun tied.
Okay.
I don't think you want to call people lucky there, Cevan. Watch it, buddy.
Well, I'm just saying to even get into the playoffs.
Well, I would
And
have made it in even if he had won. It would have been 7-7, and I still had the
Yeah.
points advantage over everyone.
Over me, yeah. It would have kicked me out
Yeah.
as the third highest scorer.
mm,
Mm.
oh
Okay.
well.
Well, let's go ahead and move to Reed. Give him the floor for his hot take. His hot take is Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are not the top scoring quarterback duo in the league. Straightforward. I'd say this is pretty high on the spice meter. Reed, what makes you feel that this is even plausible?
Well, I mean, obviously it's possible. I mean,
Well, yeah. No, I
I
said
mean,
plausible.
okay,
Plausible.
sorry. Okay, that's better. I obviously like taking injuries out of this because obviously if one of them
Yes.
gets hurt, that is easy. But even if they're hell, like we can just say points per game. I don't have a specific quarterback room in mind, but I think it would be fun to see them not be it because again, as Ian said, this is the core of his team, and if they're not, at the very least, both top three, he's going to be in trouble. So I
Yeah.
think this would be interesting to see one of them either have a down year, miss time, something like that. And then we'll see how I mean, anybody can manage when you have quarterback 1 and 2. I want to see his real managerial prowess, as he said, when someone punches you in the face and a top guy is out. How does he respond? I like it.
I could see
Okay.
Burrow and Dak being up there.
I wasn't necessarily saying myself. In fact, I didn't even
I'm
put
aware,
myself
but
at the
I'm saying
top of
I
the
think
list.
yeah,
But
no, I aware. I think that's an option for sure. Those are both guys I like a lot this year.
I think you
I
should
was
meant to say Anthony Richardson.
Right.
I
I
was
think
looking while you were talking, and the two I saw were Daniels and Stroud, and then Bo and Caleb.
Yeah, I think Bo and Caleb would probably be my. Okay. Yeah, both those two are great options.
yeah. I think what makes this hot take is quarterback is the most stable year over year position, and that the guys at the top usually stay at the
Hmm.
top. And so that's what I think makes this a hot take is Allen and Lamar have obviously been there for so long that anything else would be a shocker in the fantasy community.
Hot take, some might say.
That's right. Any other
Tyler, what do
thoughts?
you got?
We moving on to mine?
Let's hear it.
Okay. Well, someone call Krispy Kreme because I'm gonna do some glazing. By the end of the year, Ian occupies at least 5 out of 10 all-time weekly high scores in the league. Now, Ian, I don't know if you've looked recently, but you currently occupy 3 of those spots. So I'm
Sick.
saying you are going to have at least 2 more without anyone else knocking out your lowest spot, which is currently ranked 7 out of 10. Or possibly you have 3 all-time three high scoring weeks and you knock yourself out or someone else does, whatever it may be. I think by the end of the year, this team has so much firepower, so much upside, a great wide receiver room. Yes, I said it again. This team's going to occupy half the all-time weekly high scores in our league. Who knows what 26 will look like, but it'll look pretty boring by this time next year when Ian is just clogging up those high scores.
Wow.
think
I'm
No
looking right
comments.
now. I'm looking right now, and I'm surprised to see that there's only one 200 plus point performance, and it was
I agree.
228. That's Cam K. Was that Shams that
Yeah,
had
that was Shams beating
James
me.
wasn't fucking doing that.
Yeah, he beat me in the last week of the regular season, and if I would have if Deshaun would have won because I scored 188 that week, and he scored 228, and I lost. And if Deshaun would have beat Tyler in that week, I would have missed the playoffs because Sham scored 228 against me. So thankfully Deshaun lost, and I didn't have to worry about that. But yes, 228 is wild.
That's crazy. Yeah, I can muster up a 200 burger this year.
Rip Shams.
Eh.
personally, I don't. I think this is a hot take, but I'm not buying it. I don't think Ian has the. I think Ian, just let me talk to you real quick. This is one on one. This is my favorite team. Okay, so this is no shade. I think you have a super high ceiling, but I don't think you have. I don't think you have. I think you have enough to consistently win with high scoring, but I don't think you have this many like 5 out of 10 all. So that'd be at least adding two, right? Is that
At
what we? Is that what?
minimum.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think you have that type of
He had it.
weekly ceiling.
He had three last year with a worse team.
Yeah, you think my team this year was better than last year?
Well, I just think the league's gotten better as a whole, and so it's going to be like I would like this hot take for Reed's team. I think his ceiling his per week ceiling is higher than Ian's, but I think Ian's season ceiling is higher, if that makes sense.
That actually
Yeah,
makes very
that
little sense,
that's
honestly.
How not?
Well, what's there between season ceiling and week to week ceiling?
Like, so you can only start your lineup during the week.
Fact.
let them cook.
So, and I think your starting lineup has the ability to score more points on any given week than
Are you saying that
Ian's.
Ian has better depth than I do?
No.
So then how does he have a
I
higher season ceiling?
Okay, if we're talking week by week, I think your players have like a higher boom or bust rate, right? Than Ian's. But I think Ian, dude, just take the compliment.
I didn't say anything.
You said it made no sense. How does that not make sense?
I still have absolutely no idea what you're trying to say, but I think we should move on. And I'll take the glaze. Thanks, babe.
All right. Well, those are hot takes. I think those were all really good hot takes. We'll see if any of those come true. We're gonna go ahead and wrap up. And as we mentioned last week, it's a little bit of a hassle to try and get guests to make their playoff ads and odds to make the championship here. So we just have Cevan, Reed, and myself odds. Cevan has Ian at a 99% playoff odds, Reed's 75%, myself 83%. So perhaps I'm not the biggest glazer here. Swan has making the championship odds for Ian at 65%, Reed 31%, me 35%.
I'd like to lead off here because
Yeah,
I
go
think
for it.
my side is interesting. I have Ian as my number one team, and he's in the favorite, and I'm also in the favorites. I have Ian's playoff odds lower than mine, but I have his championship odds higher than mine because I think his depth makes him less. Again, his playoff odds are still very high, but they're lower than mine because I think I have better depth. But I have his championship odds higher because if everything goes right, I think his ceiling is higher. So we're close in that way, but 75% chance to make the playoffs is I believe it's the second or third highest. I believe it's the second highest in mine, and then his championship odds are the highest to me.
That's totally fair.
Yeah.
Basically, sorry, my whole argument for that last thing we were talking about was exactly what you just said.
Okay, well then you shouldn't call it season to or like week to week ceiling. I think you were referring to floor. Like my week to week floor is higher because I have depth. But if all goes
Oh,
right, his ceiling is higher because his starting lineup is very good.
yeah, it doesn't really matter.
So Don,
Um,
you
yeah,
talk?
I'll just talk.
Okay.
So the reason like Tyler and Reed's look similar than mine is because they understand what this whole assignment was. And I'm just plugging in numbers. Like Reed told me I can't have 100%, so I dropped it to 99. Um, but yeah, I mean, come on. Ian's not missing the playoffs.
Well, I
Like
heard 4 to 5 games of Lamar or Josh is gone, and maybe he is.
those are his words. I don't give a fuck about his words. This is my opinion.
It's just something I heard. That's all.
Championship. So what's that? I gave him like a
Odds
two-thirds
to make the
percent chance.
championship.
Yeah,
So
sorry. This is not to win the championship. It's to make the like to either secure a bye or make the championship like a top two team, basically.
yep. Yeah, so I give him a two-thirds chance, which that's way too high. I don't know what I'm doing. Um, I'd probably be at like 33% and like 70 79% for the playoffs if I was being realistic.
All right.
Um,
Well,
but nah, Ian's got a great team. What are we kidding? He's all of our number ones, and he's his own number one. So
Number one in our heart, at the very least.
Yay.
Tyler, final glaze of the episode.
I think it's funny, and I haven't mentioned this yet, but I think you and Cevan, or maybe it's just you, have a weird argument, and like you think I'm glazing, but you also have him as the number one team. I don't think it's a huge deal that he's in a tier of his own, so I do have him as my highest playoff odds here, highest odds to make the championship. I mean, you've heard how I feel about the team
It
right
comes up
now, but
every episode somehow.
well, I'll be sure to continue to mention it one way or another, just just so you are sure to remember how I feel about this team.
I will,
So,
especially in week two when Ian and I are showing off or showing down, having a showdown.
sounds good. Yeah, that'll be a great early season litmus test. So,
Anthony
those are
Richardson will prove his prowess in that week. I can promise you now. But it doesn't work because Ian's also at least used to be an AR believer. So
yeah. Ian, any thoughts on the odds here that we have?
Yeah, I mean, I got some final thoughts that I think are apt to close this episode. I mean, I don't have any numbers like you guys have to match with these predictions, but you know, I don't feel comfortable predicting like a championship or even making the semis because, like we said, anything can go wrong in one given week. And how are you going to predict 2 to 3 individual outcomes months away in the future, right? But will say I think I'm going to make the playoffs by a better margin than last year when I was 7-7 and barely squeaked in. I think I've got a good chance at another scoring title, and I do have high championship hopes. But above all, most importantly, I am going to make Power Rankings bot choke these nuts.
I'm right there with you. That thing
Oh,
sucks.
that's making me feel like one of us should have had like a power ranking spot hot take or something.
Ian, bold or not bold, but question for you.
What's up?
Do you think you can overtake the all-time record, take over the all-time best record in a single season in fine dining?
that's
Like
10 and
record
4,
wise or
right?
points
10,
wise?
10 no, record 10 and 4.
I think it'd be hard. I mean, I do have a lot of openings with like the rookies and question marks that I have. I think it's a definite possibility, but I'm not going to sit here and say, yeah, I'm going to do it.
Savannah, were you asking like both years combined or just the like your record of 10 and 4
No,
last
no,
year?
no, just season, one
Okay.
season. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a possibility that I go 11-3, but I also do think there's a possibility that I can go 6-7. So,
Yeah.
or 6-8. But I think that I'm definitely gonna finish better than 7-7 in my eyes. So that's the
Well,
goal.
shoot for double digits and we'll see if you can catch me.
Yes, sir.
Very nice. Well, any other closing thoughts from the crew here?
I'm glad we
Oh,
got that out of the way.
Of course. Of course, I got something for you. So, as Ian was just finishing up his closing thoughts, I thought to myself, what have I been thinking during this episode? And what have I been arguing for? And I came to the conclusion, got on my phone, went to the Google Sheets, and I officially went back to Reed being my number one team and demoting Ian to number two.
Wow, that's a great way to close this.
I should say that's so insulting to do it on air.
They're both
Thanks.
still my favorites.
I would be lying if I said I didn't have the same thought because like again, when we're doing these power rankings, you're trying to go through multiple teams, skimming the teams, not skimming necessarily, but like you're not doing like an in-depth like this is what I think about this room. This is what I think about this room. This is what I think his depth is like. It's more of just like an overarching thing and how I feel
Vibes.
about his team, not vibes, but like you're not putting critical thought into every single player on the roster like we do in these. And I'd be lying if I said I'm a little bit lower on his team now that we talked through all the players, all the rooms individually, got your guys' thoughts. I don't know if I necessarily say I'd move him below me, but I have also had similar thoughts, but I don't want to glaze myself in Ian's episode. So
Well, it's a good thing that I was on this pod because now when I'm listening back, I know when to stop listening. Whatever. I don't care. I just want to make power rankings bot suck it. Fucking put me 11th that one time. That was retarded.
well, your team was a lot worse back then when you were
It was the
11th.
same team.
Okay, well, Chase Brown wasn't a workhorse then. You
Well,
didn't
they
have
just
Nico
should have known.
Collins then. And just to be clear, so you and everybody else knows I am not the one who makes like this. The simulation that it runs for this power rankings is completely independent. I have no ownership over the code of that stuff. So that runs from an impartial third party, and then I just send it through the power rankings bot. The playoff odds, those are the ones that I have control over. Sorry, not control. I wrote the simulation for that. I did not write the power rankings bot, which I either use through two different, either KeepTradeCut or a different way that I can do it with my code. So I will not be gargling your nuts, but the independent third party might be willing to gargle.
Yeah. No, well, no, I'm aware that it's not you, and it's
Okay.
not going to be willing. They're gonna. Independent
Well,
third party is gonna.
yeah, no, I just want to make sure that was out there because I know a lot of people don't know where that comes from. They just kind of show up for the people that do care about them. So I just wanted to make that clear.
I have a source that Tyler is said third party.
Tyler is willing to gargle the
What?
nuts, I think.
This is ridiculous. I'll stand firm in my number one team in the league,
I'm not
and
surprised.
shouldn't be.
Is he
It's
still firmly in his own tier?
firmly yes.
Oh my God. You're pretty firm right now. We get that.
All right. Well, if no one has any other thoughts, I say we shut it down, close it down, and look forward to next week.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me on, fellas.
Yeah, it was a good time. So, well, we have 5 out of 12 team breakdowns done. So be on the lookout for number 6 to drop soon.
We'll see you next week.